Welcome to the What's a Verdict podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts Matt Senheider
I say, better red than dead.
and Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification buttons. Tell a friend about us. Tell a family member about us. Tell some people in some serious danger due to weird things, whether it be sight or hearing.
Well, don't tell us about it if you're in a Quiet Place universe. You're going to have
Fair.
to sign it to us.
Yeah, write it down or something. But whatever you do, don't bring noisy toys.
Maybe tell Alec so he can die.
Go for
it. So yeah, we're kicking off a new month. It's February 2025. That's wild to me, guys, that we're already in February. And wow. But yeah, we're kicking off a new month. We're going old school. We're going back to the roots. Alex getting to join us on something we used to do pretty often, and we haven't done it for a long time. So we're doing it, and that is our arbitration series. So we used to do videos. It started with some twin movies, but we've kind of branched, and we got some twin movies for the month, which is movies that came out same year with similar plot lines. And then we've got some that are just similar movies and not quite twins because they didn't come out the same year. But kicking it off, we're doing A Quiet Place versus Bird Box. So let's jump into those real quick, and then we'll get started. So let me tell you a little bit about them. First one, A Quiet Place, was released April 6, 2018. It was written by Brian Wood, Scott Beck, and John Krasinski. It was directed by John Krasinski. Stars Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe, Cade Woodward, and Leon Russum. I might as well throw in Rhoda Pell too, because that just lists the whole 7 people cast that this movie had. And versus Bird Box. It was released December 21st, 2018. And it was written by Eric Heisserer and Josh Mallerman. It was directed by Suzanne Bier. Stars Sandra Bullock, Trevante Rhodes, John Malkovich, Sarah Paulson, Jackie Weaver, Rosa Salazar, Danielle McDonald, Lorraine Howery, and Tom Hollander. First one, Quiet Place. God, there's a lot to talk about when we do these. It's about a family who struggles for survival in a world invaded by blind alien creatures with ultra-sensitive hearing. And Bird Box is 5 years after an ominous unseen presence drives most of society to suicide. A mother and her 2 children make a desperate bid to reach safety. So we're going to go through, first and foremost, let's talk about these movies, and it's our verses, and we're going to do this right here.
Whoa.
Yeah, we got a verse.
That was a surprise to the both of us. That was
right.
Whoa. I
love it.
Take my headphones off for that. The bass hit me so hard. Say it with your chest.
That's right.
But I went to tell her before we started talking about these movies, I've been pushing to bring back verses. It's a lot of work for us to do because you have to watch a double the movies basically. But I think it's a lot of fun to pit movies kind of against each other, especially ones that are so similar, those that come out in the same year. I don't know why Hollywood does that. Like there's like, let's just at least 2 of the very same things. But I think it's fun because the more you do this, whether it's remakes and you do that or movies that are similar, like you're always comparing movies to other movies. That's usually like you have like the barometer, like, man, this movie was so good. Nothing's as good as this. Well, let's talk about it. And so I think we'll probably do this once or twice a year. It's pretty time consuming, but I'm glad that my co-stars, co-hosts are interested enough to bring this back. And we get to pop Alex cherry on some of the OG-ness that we used to do and bring it back.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. We used to do these. One of our earliest episodes was one of these, wasn't it? Yeah.
Why do we think twin movies exist though? Like those that are similar come out in the same year. Like that always has been weird to me.
It's PlayStation and Xbox. That's all Hollywood is. They gotta beat the blind invasion alien listening thing, so you go with 2 different ideas that are very similar and see which one wins out.
Yeah. And my understanding is that most of it is like, especially like in this case, right? You get what happens is you get a couple of original screenplays because these ones aren't. At least I don't know about Bird Box because I don't know enough about it. But A Quiet Place was an original thing. Like it wasn't. Yeah, it was original screenplay. We could have done it last month too. Like it would have worked in what we were doing with original screenplays. But my understanding is there's always treatments, not actual scriptings, but treatments that are sold. And so then those treatments get taken and they start getting tweaked, and writers actually get involved versus just these treatments of an idea around, hey, these guys there's aliens that have supersonic hearing and they have to learn how to live in silence, right? Or Bird Box where it's can't look at anything or whatever it is that's out there. So that somewhere along the line is my understanding is that there was a treatment that said due to senses, right? Like they have to get rid of one of their senses in order to survive in the world that they live in now. And so then it grows and expands, but two people have bought this treatment, two studios or writing groups or whatever it is. And then they go, and then they end up on track to release the same time or in the same year. Doesn't happen very often anymore. It used to happen a ton. Like if you go back, like there's tons. And we've got 4 of them this month that I think 3 of the 4 that we're doing were twin movies. So I know Matt and I were talking about one last night, a couple of them last night that he was watching that they came out. Those are the same year and very similar.
Yeah,
twin movies.
yeah. It's an interesting concept, but excited for this month. Where I wanted to, at least for me, kick things off is there's 2. We're going to talk about 4 different kind of areas that we're going to rate against. But the thing that was my first question for both of you is obviously Bird Box came out on Netflix, so watched it at home. Did all of us see A Quiet Place in theaters or not?
I did.
Yes, I did.
Oh, and I think that's
the grin with which he says that is great.
And I think that's going to be the thing I always come back to with this is both of these movies are movie theater movies in my opinion. And I think Bird Box, I think it's, in my opinion, suffered a little bit because I would have liked to experience that in theaters. But A Quiet Place was, to me, one of the more unique. Excuse Baby Ray in the background. One of the more unique things that I've experienced in cinema in a while. It's one of the things I remember going and seeing in person and experiencing it with the audience. I don't know if you all had that kind of same experience where it was so quiet. No one did want to make a sound. Like, and when you did, like, you probably had that bonehead that like yelled at some point, just like, because I was like, oh, like,
you leave me alone.
Yeah. But I had I really appreciated the experience I had with the people I was watching with and with the movie theater. And I thought it was really unique and interesting and different and memorable. Like I still remember what that felt like going to see that in theaters. And honestly, that's hard to compete against. Like it felt like an event.
Yeah. Quiet Place was one of those things that I hadn't seen a movie that intrigued me from like, haven't seen anything like this before in a very long time. And so I was really excited. That, and I love John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and
well, you felt like you were part of the movie a little bit in a sense. And so what I'm trying to get at is that, but then with Bird Box coming out later and it being at home, like it just felt like a stepsister, stepbrother, and just and like you're like, this is cool, but like I just kind of did this, and I did this with a bunch of people with louder sounds, felt really tense, and like experiencing it together. And I'm gonna watch this other thing at home, and it never hit the same for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
That was just my general sense. Like that, I wish we could have more experiences like this at movie theaters again. Like the last thing I felt like that was kind of like Dune 2. I felt like I was kind of a part of something a little bit. And that to me it's really hard to do with movies these days. And we just get away from it because it's so easy to just say, let's release it on stream, which is great and convenient, but we lose the magic of what makes for like an event, like a movie that you're excited to go to. And that's, I think, of most of what I appreciated about these 2 movies we're talking about, especially with The Quiet Place. Like I just wanted to make sure I called that out.
Yeah, I love it. Completely agree. So what's our first topic, Matson? What are we comparing these two?
All right. First one's pretty simple. Storyline and plot development is what we're going to discuss first. I've done a lot of talking, so I'll stop for a little bit.
Oh,
what do we
am I
think?
gonna talk now?
Go for
Story
it,
Yeah,
Alex.
go for it, Alex.
development. Oh boy. Okay. First time doing this. A little nervous.
That's okay.
What do we compare? Do I just start talking about which is better or which I like?
So
better?
I'll lay the scene. Like I think what helps to talk to our audience about is think about these two movies in the sense of some of the things that I can think about that are a little bit different is the world building. I think there's some stark contrast between both of these movies. One was very psychological versus one that was a little bit more slightly suspense, more thriller. And then did we feel like one was maybe more predictable than the other? Things like that. There's just some of the things that come to mind for this movie. Or
Cool.
sorry, these movies, I should say.
I love it. Quiet Place did a really good job. Bird Box sucked. On this. No, so for watching A Quiet Place, I think they immerse you immediately, right? And you are learning about this world while it's already unfolded and it's happening around you. And it's no setup, nothing. You just get dropped right into it. And to kind of speak to what Max was talking about, that kind of makes it real, right? Like, oh no. And then there's, incredibly large times of Quiet Place where there's no sound, none. It's not even like white noise in the background. There's just nothing. Versus Bird Box gets the whole kind of start to, end. You see what it was like before, you see what's happening, and then you kind of get the aftermath and you see how it flows through. But for me, watching Bird Box, it felt like most of the focus or whatever was on how is Mallory going to have this kid? Not necessarily about whatever's happening to everybody else, but it's a big kind of focus, or seems to be a huge draw into the aftermath. Like, what's going to happen to this child that she has? And so it's, that was my entire focus while watching Bird Box on both occasions. And kids are just terrible little gremlins. I hate their guts, so it wasn't much of an emotional pull for me. Versus on the other side with A Quiet Place, like I can't help it. I just make noise. Like I'm dead in this world instantaneously. Versus Bird Box, I just got to stay inside. Too easy. So I don't know. That was, I felt like A Quiet Place kind of did it better for me.
Sure.
If I had to vote, which I'm gonna, because I like Sanger's a loser.
I mean, we'll get there. Right now, we're just compare. But yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense what you're saying, and I think for me, like, I don't disagree with you, and I think from a story perspective, like, what gets me, I think the difference between Bird Box for me and A Quiet Place is what you kind of leaned into there, Alec, is that you drop into this world, and one, it's a world of silence by necessity. And it was funny. So before you start talking, like, I know that you can't do the silence. So I was like, I'm not going to say anything and watch Alex squirm right here, because it's like one of those things, right? Where it's and that was A Quiet Place got me. Like, I sit down and I'm like, ooh, I don't like how quiet this is. Like, it's awkward. Nobody likes that much silence typically. And so, and then the other thing that it does in terms of story is Bird Box has some intensity to it, and it's a thriller, and it's like, oh God, this is uncomfortable. But what really is uncomfortable for me with Quiet Place is they put you in the most traumatic opening that you can think of in this story, right? So you have this family that you're immediately like, this is wild. They had to put these sand lines up, and they're being quiet. The dad's being smart, shuts down the toy, can't let the noise get made, whatever. And then through an act of being a good big sister and trying, you know what I mean? Like, it ends up in the worst possible scenario. And then you jump back to, we're still in this world of silence, but now there's this lingering event traumatic event that this family's dealt with, and you want them to recover, but how are they recovering, right? And so you have this underlying family dynamic that's happening in this world of pure fear and going against our normal nature of talking and being loud and obnoxious. And so it's really, there's multiple layers to the story. And I think the problem that I have with Bird Box is it's just a bunch of people in a shitty situation that have to like either decide whether they're going to be shitty humans or they're going to give up or they're going to keep fighting and take care of each other as best they can. And so it's like human nature sucks. And so what, like, I know where that one's going versus rooting for this family. I think to me, that's the big difference in the story is I am uncomfortable with this family, but rooting for them from the jump. And then I'm like, why are you associating yourself with with any of these people in Bird Box? I'm like, just leave them, go away. You have no familial ties to most, you know what I mean? Like, just get these kids and go do your thing. So I don't know. Like, that's to me where it's like, the difference is I'm immediately attached and ready to rock. In Bird Box, like, I'm only attached because I love Sandra Bullock. Like, that's it, right? Like, so that's the big difference. But when it comes to plot and story, that's where the comparison is.
Yeah, I'm very close to what JJ was gonna say. Like, ditto's the TLDR, but I think if Bird Box didn't have Sandra Bullock, because we'll talk about shortly as well on another category, I think it's just it would have just been another Netflix movie that released, but no one really talked about. But they obviously were smart, knew they had to go get a go-getter. Whereas like A Quiet Place, obviously it did have some. I mean, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski they're pretty good in their own right, and there's definitely some star power there. But this is the type of movie, being A Quiet Place, that I think, so that unique concept still was so new and different. And like I said, an event, I think people still would have been talking about it and listening to it. And I think it's just the family aspects of A Quiet Place that really endeared me to that progression and the struggle of the daughter with the hearing aid, and how she just still felt guilty. The whole family felt guilty, but they were having the birth of this new child that was kind of a new beginning, but a new beginning in a really hard place. I think it just landed better than a Bird Box that had some somewhat similar premises, but it just felt more predictable in a story that you've seen 1,000 times, just told in a slightly different way. So for me, I mean, it's a pretty easy give it to A Quiet Place on this one, no doubt.
I like it. Chalk one up. What's next, Mattson?
All right. The next one's we'll go to we'll jump around. Yeah, we'll do the next one we kind of alluded to. We'll talk about character development. Let's have JJ go first.
Yeah, I think for this one, like, there's a stark contrast, and I say that because, in my opinion, A Quiet Place has multitudes of character development, like specifically around John Krasinski's character and Millicent's character, like the daughter and son or daughter and father dynamic of, you have a daughter that, like you mentioned, Mattson, that blames herself for her baby brother's death, right? And a dad, and then she assumes that her dad does too, right? And so there's this tension there that makes sense. And so you have to see it developed all the way through to the end where, Krasinski gets to make this grand gesture of, distracting the monster so that his kids can survive. And so it's like, there's a ton of it in that. And in Bird Box, like, I don't think there's much at all. Like, I mean, there's a little bit obviously with Sandra Bullock, because she's got to learn that this is a tough world and she wants to be good at blah, 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 blah. But she's the only one. And the rest of them, like, they're just who they are. They're paper cutouts of a character that drives the story for Sandra Bullock, right? There's no dynamic of, and I think, to me, when I think about like an example of this in the movies, like for A Quiet Place, the moment where Emily Blunt's character looks at John Krasinski's is like, keep them safe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, go take care of our kids or whatnot. I don't remember what the exact line was, but like, that to me is this moment where you're like, oh shit, everybody's having this serious situation and they're having to learn about each other and work with each other and love each other, whatever. In Bird Box, I'm like, we could have, taken all of the extra people out of this, and other than the fact that they create tension for Sandra Bullock's characters and these kids, like, I don't need them, right? Clever writing could have just had this be about Sandra Bullock and the two kids and maybe one or two of the other characters, but the rest, they're all there just to be MacGuffins and parts that break this story and make it more difficult. And I'm like, that to me is like, there's huge depth of character in one and there's no depth of character in another. And so it's like, these couldn't be two for me on further ends of a spectrum when it comes to character development. Like, one is a masterclass and the other is just like typical, we've got a huge star, let's just put a bunch of names and faces that everybody recognizes that don't actually have any depth whatsoever. Like, anybody could have played these characters and any character could have been stuffed in this and made a poor decision or a good decision and nothing changed.
I mean, I think the easy chalk it up decision for me is it's hard to compete against a couple in the movie that's also a couple in real life. Like, I mean,
That's fair.
Talk about some on-screen chemistry. I mean, that I think just jumps off the page. And to me, I just think the emotional tension in A Quiet Place is carried, like, as JJ talked about, the opening scene through the end of how this movie ends. Like, this movie really makes you feel something, and it does that throughout the aspects of that movie. Where a Bird Box, like, Sandra Bullock's an amazing actor. I'm not trying to take anything away from her. You feel for her and some of her decisions, but the supporting cast that JJ talks about, I don't think ever moves the needle. They're just kind of there. And I think A Quiet Place made a good decision where they didn't involve anybody else. They just had the chaos of the environment and the aliens, but it was a family tension, and they just kept it there. And they were smart because they could have had some other rando from one of those other farms with the signal come in and, added a whole nother 15 minutes to some tension plot point. Easily could have done them. We've seen so many movies that have to grab onto something like that to make the story more than what it is. And I felt like Bird Box is more of that, where A Quiet Place was really smart. Just said, no, we're going to lean in. We got enough of this little family. It's gone through a lot. We can tell the story here.
Yeah.
I was going to say, any character development that I saw in Bird Box really wasn't earned. Like, you have little moments of what you would expect from, like, the beginning, and then it jumps to the end. But there's nothing in the middle that would lead to that. For example, the one comes to mind is little Ray Howery.
Yeah.
Who, right off the bat, smartest guy in the movie. He's like, I'm not leaving the house to go to the supermarket. You know where it is. Here's the keys. Yeah. This is as far as I'm going. To 5 minutes later, he's the guy who saves the group by charging at fish fingers.
Yeah.
And it's like, help me get, because me as a person, I'm not going to the supermarket. While I'm there, I am certainly not tackling fish fingers.
Yeah.
Save a bunch of random strangers. Like, you have to help me get to that point or understand how he got to that point, because up until this point, he's kind of the joke of the group, right? Because he's the one who's got the conspiracy theories, and he's writing a novel in a college rule-wide notebook. Like, I'm not sticking my neck out for any of y'all.
Yeah. And
then you're going to make fun of me on top of that? Like, no, screw you. But anytime they had that, what you'd expect to be the final kind of character development, it really wasn't earned. I mean, the same way where you have, Sandra Bullock finally names the kids right at the end, and she's been calling them girl and boy for the entire movie because, don't form attachments. Totally get it. Understand. They're with you. But then it's just, there's no way to earn that to then all of a sudden it's just a nice way to wrap up the movie. Like, yeah. So it's like all is happening in Quiet Place, and then none of it, or just kind of, it's like for Bird Box, they had the formula, or like a Mad Libs, right? And they just wrote in the answers for the Mad Libs, and we got a script.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah. Well, and I think the simplicity of a Quiet Place too, to kind of match this point, you got 7 people in the cast, and one of them's already dead, and the other one only serves to show John Krasinski's character how to distract at the end, right? Like, so it's a mirror of what we're gonna see at the end. Outside of that, it's 4 people living in a house, right? And so it's just like, and yet there's so much development of each of these main characters, like even the kid, like the son, like, and the dog, like, geez, dude, it's just a ton. And then Bird Box is full of just amazing cast that are just unnecessary. And to your point, don't only move the needle through breaking what they've already established as a character. And so it's like, yeah, it's a good point.
I hate when Hollywood does that, though. To Alex point, it's like, "What, do you think I'm stupid? I know I just watched 5 minutes ago. Like, how am I supposed to believe that this is what they would do now? Like, but that happens so often.
Oh yeah, turn on a dime where it's just like, what? How does that happen? Why would he do? Yeah, because I'll tell you right now, Bird Box Land, nobody's getting in that house. Nope. Be like waving from the window.
Bye.
Yeah. And waving with my gun.
Yeah.
I dare you. So anyway. All right. Well, yeah, that's the
All right.
clear
Third one.
Yeah. Third
I'll
one.
kick this third off. I've already honestly talked a lot about this. Cinematography and sound design. Again, I go back to kind of when I started off with this versus podcast. It's just the event that A Quiet Place is. To me, Bird Box is like many movies we've seen. To me, I didn't feel like there was anything revolutionary or groundbreaking or different. Good expected suspense and loud noises and music and things that I've seen in many movies, but I've never, again, quite experienced anything like A Quiet Place in theater. Just it's like JJ talked about. I mean, I can tell you, I've never seen a movie like it that embraced silence like that. There's been movies where they didn't play music during like a part and it was just straight dialogue. And we've seen some of those movies and you can create tension that way, but they don't do it for very long. Or there's been movies that they play an eerie sound like every movie does, and that works too. But I've never seen anything where I felt like while I was watching the movie, it's like, I don't want to make a sound either. Like, shoot, I don't want to slurp from my drink. I don't want to crinkle this wrapper. I don't want to knock over whatever it may be in the theater. Like, you didn't want to be that person because you were in it with them. And that was an amazing experience to be a part of that, and or be that one person in our movie theater that yelled out at some point that no one is expecting, being like, oh my gosh, like what are you doing? Like, you're gonna die now, like aliens coming through the screen and ending your life. I just thought it was so beautifully done. I think visually speaking, both were smart in the sense that they never really gave you like a lot of glimpses of the alien. Like, I don't think like the CGI for a Quiet Place, for instance, was like incredible, but it wasn't bad. But I like the decision by both movies to kind of not ever reveal their hand a ton. They kind of did at the end with A Quiet Place, but I think it was a smart culmination of showing you like that oh shit moment. But man, I mean, to me, A Quiet Place is just so unique, and I got to give it on the sound especially, and then cinematography, I think maybe breaking closer to even for both of them, but an incredible experience in terms of A Quiet Place for that.
What about you, Alec?
It's tricky because like we've all talked about Matt's, and again just saying the fact that the sound from A Quiet Place plays such a huge role. Like 100%, I do it all the time. It wouldn't be like on purpose, but oh shit, oh fuck, as just like a natural reaction.
Yeah.
And so when it's that quiet, I'm just getting there, oh, type of a thing, because you don't want to mess it up. But Bird Box Sight's a tricky one, right? Because the equivalent would be to have black screen for certain moments and really lean into the audio. And I don't think it would land as well. Like, I think it could be cool if done right, but there's so many ways you could mess that up, because you'd almost have to film it from like a first person perspective, right? Because both these, it's second person, right? Third person.
Yeah.
One of those two. But in order to kind of go with the sight and spin it in the same way Quiet Place does, you would have to almost do it from a first person perspective, which would be cool, but also really difficult to do and pull off. But yeah,
I feel like people would hate that. Like, it's like that movie
It's like you love it or you hate it. There's no in between. And
What's
most
that?
people hate it.
Cloverfield. I actually like
Yeah.
that movie, but many people hated that because it was that first person perspective, and I actually really like that movie. But I don't, generally speaking, cinema, they trashed on it, and I feel like that would be more of that.
Because it almost it takes it and makes it that real kind of aspect, right? Versus because that's Quiet Place able to do that with the audio, and it doesn't matter, everything else that's going on that you can see doesn't matter because the rule is you can't make noise. Versus Quiet Place, it's almost like you're just observing what's happening, and it makes it less impactful, I guess, having it go from that way. But I was just thinking, if we opened up a Quiet Place with just black screen, you have kind of like the heavy breathing going back and forth of someone running, crashing through a forest or whatever it is, that would be the equivalent to what they do in A Quiet Place. And then you're kind of sucked in this world, and you can still have the back, story that's going on and the flashbacks to the previous time where it's, you get the story of what's happening and how it devolves into this. But if you did the entire present as just like a black screen, kind of having to listen to the cues, I almost think you could do something like that and have it be successful. But the way it landed for me just didn't land.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of this whole situation with these two is one plays well to the medium to immerse you in the world, right? The silence, and we've talked about this when we reviewed A Quiet Place too, like the silence almost being an additional character, especially like I love the moments. Why can I never remember the girl's name? With Reagan, because they lean into the fact that she is deaf, and so when it's from her perspective or we're focused on her, like it is completely and utterly silent. Like there is no, and that immersion it's not possible to do without doing some weird things that are going to turn some people off with sight. And I think for me, the one thing that gets me with Bird Box from a cinematography standpoint is they do what they can to show the danger of what you know what I mean? And they do it with like the weird, quick, like there's almost like a distortion of the screen when they're like the visuals there, like you get that weird pan out kind of thing as like everybody's seeing whatever it is they're looking at, but there's no sense of danger other than they go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs after they see whatever it is that they see. Whereas with A Quiet Place, even though you don't ever see the actual monster until near the mid to the end of the movie, there's enough seeing it and hearing that, like, that's to me one of the worst things. Like when that old dude screams, or when the at the very beginning when the rocket ship thing goes off and you hear the trees, because that's, I don't know if either of you ever, I mean, Alec, I'm sure you probably haven't, but if you've ever been out in the woods and you hear that sound far off, like it's creepy. You're like, is somebody out there? Is that an animal?
Grizzly bear.
Yeah, what the fuck is that? And then to know that there's like this, and then all of a sudden just this blur of a creature goes flying by, right? Or this thing jumps on this old man. Like that visual tied to the silence really helps, right? Bird Box, it's tough because you can't show, they made a choice in this one to not show what you're actually looking at, but there's nothing that truly represents the fact that there's real danger other than what happens after they look, right? So yes, it creates tension and discomfort, but from a cinematography, there's no real threat to me. It's just keep your fucking eyes closed. And that's where I go back to what you're talking about, Alec. Like, why would you leave the house? If I can keep my eyes open in the house, if it's just outside, I'm never leaving my house. And my house's windows will be boarded up, blocked, and hanging out, right? Threat averted. In A Quiet Place, there is no threat aversion because unless you're on, like we find out in A Quiet Place too, and even there they get fucked up. They're on an island where they can't get to, right? So it's like the whole world is a place of danger in both movies, but I don't have anything from a viewing perspective to tie me to that danger in Bird Box other than what happens to them after. And that's just a play on they become suicidal, if you will. And they, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, that's the big difference, is that I have a complete and utter representation of my plot point and danger in A Quiet Place. Whereas Bird Box, then I get why they made the decisions that they did. Like, how do you show something of that nature, right? You got to be pretty clever. And this is where I get worried about these writers, because if you can't figure out a way to show it, whatever it is, and maybe it's different, because if it were me writing, it'd be different for every person. And I want to, and I would show that as soon as they open their eyes, like they're seeing something and it's different for every person, whether it's their greatest shame or their greatest fear or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. I need, as a viewer in this particular film, I've also talked many times on our podcast about sometimes not showing a monster is the greatest thing you can do. But I need to know that it's a monster in Bird Box and not just some visual stimulation, right? I need to know one or the other. If it's visual stimulation, then show me that stimulation. Let it be unique for each person, something like that. If it's a monster, then give me glimpses of the monster, or make me understand that there's a monster, and then never show it to me fully. I'm fine with that, because I'm worse at creating scary things than you can ever be. However, they don't do either of those things in this movie. They leave it completely up to me, which I understand the decision, but it just doesn't work as well to me as what A Quiet Place does, of immersing you in that sensory deprivation, versus in Bird Box, I don't have to ever feel that. The other thing that I thought too was, like, they don't have to do it a lot, but even if, like, early on in the film, when we're first introduced, just have a blank black screen, or they're wearing a cloth. So there's no such thing as, like, with what they're wearing, there's no such thing as a pure blackout, right? So let me see just the shadows, like I'm looking through something. Just give me that level of discomfort versus me having to create it all in my mind. And I think it becomes more, from a cinematic perspective, much more involved.
Look, this just in. The monster in Bird Box is actually JJ's booty hole.
That would do that to people.
Not a pleasant image.
Nope.
No,
That doesn't explain why that one lady was like, "Hi, mom," though. Like, now it's just weird.
Yeah, no, that's that could be awkward.
Yeah, unexplainable in that one.
Yeah.
Well, let's round us out to our last topic, and we'll start with JJ in this one. I think this is the one that'll be. We talked around it about this a little bit, but let's talk about the suspension and tension of these two movies and which one did it better.
Yeah, again, I think this one's an easy decision for me, and that is A Quiet Place, because it's about this family and the tribulations. And it's kind of, Alec, we've talked about this a million times in the podcast, and all of us have, but, like, when I'm watching A Quiet Place, like, I'm in this film with these people. Like, I am rooting for them. I want them to survive. Like, and I'm watching them grow. I'm watching them fall short in places and all these different areas. And so the intention for me is, we're in an area that is in this terrible place with a scary monster, and you can't make noise or they're coming for you. And that's how good their hearing is. But I'm more interested, and I get a lot of the dynamics with this family in this shitty place. It is a movie about this family who's going through some shit, has been through some shit, and is trying to move forward and find a life for themselves in this terrible world. That is this movie, and everything else is the backdrop for it. And it does it so well, because you're, like, rooting for this family in this terrible situation. Bird Box, to me, gets in its own way, like, in my opinion, is the best way I can describe it. And that is, it has a great premise, but they make it all about the fact that Sandra Bullock's in it. Like, that's their claim to fame. And then there's, like, some great cameos with a John Malkovich and a Lil Ray Howery, and even fucking Machine Gun Kelly, for whatever god awful fucking reason he was in this movie. But that's the shit that I'm talking about. Like, they didn't have the concept and the intention that Quiet Place did to tell this story. And so they had to superficially fill it with things that keep your attention. That being a bunch of crazy famous faces, even to the point of bringing in people that are super famous, like the sister was Sarah Paulson at the beginning. You know what I mean? When we find out what's going on. And so it's like, to me, that's the sign of superficial storytelling is you have to load it full of huge cast that don't actually do anything. There was no reason for that cast. And so are you really telling a great story, or are you doing it in the best possible way? No, because you're just keeping my attention or other people's attention through huge actors and famous faces that you pop in weird situation. So to me, yeah, that's the difference. Is I'm fully invested in A Quiet Place. In Bird Box, I'm just watching something.
I think he said my name. I'm not sure, but
Hey,
I don't think the
Alec.
Okay, just wanted to make sure before.
Alec, not to be confused with Alex.
That's true.
Boom. I don't think there is any intention with the suspense in Bird Box. I think they try, but they can't stick to their own story and their own rules long enough to make it make sense. Like even the point where you have Greg who shows up, right? And Greg, who's just an awful human being, but at the same time, right? You know, he's someone who's looked. There's the birds give no sign of it, right? Even though they have alerted before and continue to alert throughout the movie, there's no sign that Greg is bad from the birds. They even check. So it's like, okay, this can be disguised, allegedly. Why? You know, and then we can't look at this at the you know, whatever this thing is, unless you're like a psychopath. So I'm safe. But you know, there's now rules to this. Like if you're already crazy or whatever, then it doesn't affect you. And now you have this is that, you know, I guess existential threat, right? To get people out of the house. So you have this premise where, you know, JJ, you and I and Matt, so we talked about, like, just stay in the house. Boom, you're good. It's like, oh, well, that doesn't move the story along. So how do we get them to leave their house? Oh, well, I guess, you know, the only reason to leave your house would be to help someone else. But if they, you know, this person could be outside, then, you know, they must have looked at it. Oh, I guess, you know, we have to have a reason for them to be okay to look at it. And then it just, one after the other, you're almost undoing any suspense that you had built, to the point that it's extremely predictable, and it doesn't hit you when it's time, right? Like everything they set up to be like, oh, hey, why does that happen? Right? Doesn't matter anymore. It just kind of goes out the window, because trying to explain everything, they lose any sense of suspense that they've built up.
Agreed.
I don't even have anything more to add. I would just be piling on top of the both of you. I've already said it a million times. Like, you can't beat no sound and terrifying me in a theater more than anything else. And Bird Box, like I've said, it's movies I've seen before that have been rehashed out with the star, and it's not that it's uninteresting. It's just something that I've seen in other places, but A Quiet Place is something that I'd never seen. And I mean, I just remember I don't really buy, like, definitely, I mean, movie theater, I'm not a big popcorn person. I'll eat popcorn, but like treats, I'll bring those in myself, because come on, movie theaters, like, unless when I had my A-list membership and I was getting a ton of points and things were like half off, nobody's in their right mind should be paying full price for like a bag of candy there. It's like triple the amount that you could get at a local grocery store. But when you're opening those things up, man, they make sound. And you always try to do it like during like a part of the movie that's louder. We all do that. Or you open your soda can or whatever you're doing. You don't have that in that movie. And you're like, I can't be this person that's making all this sound. Like, my friends are going to look at me. The person next to me that I don't know is going to be like, yo, you're going to kill him. Didn't want to do that. But the Bird Box at home, you're just kind of like, all right, like, well, I'm not going to die watching this on screen, because I don't even know what this looks like either. But it's just hard to replicate that. And I wish we had more reasons to go to the theater like this one and experience things like that. Easy win for A Quiet Place.
Yeah. I think a great example of, like, the big difference between these two is like the apex situation, right? So in A Quiet Place, you have the what's her face in the bathtub about to give
Emily Blunt.
birth.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
And like this thing's crawling up the stairs and she's silently screaming. She's freaking
Ugh.
out. That part, like you're just, at least for me, like I was just, my skin was crawling going. And it's such an impressive performance. And like you just feel the weight of it all. And then in Bird Box, like I just was like, is she really navigating Whitewater Rapids and nobody can fucking see right now? And I'm supposed to be what? Scared? Intent? Like I was like, first of all, I've whitewater rafted quite a few times. They're toast. They're toast. Not gonna happen. So then I'm like, yeah. So the apex of these movies alone, where I'm supposed to feel the most tension, and in A Quiet Place, I'm like, can I leave? And then Bird Box, I'm like, yeah, you're done. You wouldn't make it down that river without being able to see. You wouldn't. It just would not happen. And so it's like, yeah, that's a great to me.
Get Tan here to explain the pains of childbirth. Thankfully, epidurals do magical things, but I can't even imagine not making a sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, Tay. Yeah, she's yelling up at us. She said it was a nightmare, so they did a good job.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask a trivia question. What was the budget for both of these movies? It's actually very close as well.
125 million.
Oh,
big
way
number.
lower.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna say for A Quiet Place, 40 million, and Bird Box 60.
Still very far off.
Really?
Quiet Place, approximately 17 million.
Hmm.
Bird Box, 19 million, which you really think about it, cheap. We don't have obviously how much Bird Box grossed, but I have two other questions. So in terms of A Quiet Place, how much did it gross worldwide?
I gotta be $250 million. 250 million.
180 million.
340.
Wow.
I mean, you think about how much money
Yeah,
the movie made some money.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know about why they made a number 2 right there.
Oh yeah.
And even now, when I'm like, well, man, maybe we did do something right here. Probably should make another one.
Yeah.
Bird Box. How many accounts watch this on Netflix? I will preface and say it is one of the most watched films at the time. So
Sure.
Scope your numbers.
22 million.
30 million.
45 million.
That's crazy. I mean, my account watched it once, now twice, unfortunately.
But I think that's when you go back to the power of a star. I think about what Netflix has done with some of these movies that we've seen and reviewed, even on here, like that aren't great, but they put in The Rock or Sandra Bullock or Ryan Reynolds or someone else, and I mean, I think that carried. They probably even have, like, the more they do this, they probably have stats like, look, if you put The Rock in this movie, I can guarantee you we're going to get 20 million people at minimum to watch this movie. And they probably, like, literally, I'm sure they have that data now. They could just say it, like,
Sure.
what star are we doing? Here's how much we're going to pay based off that. Like, we're all about data these days. I bet you that there's someone has that in their, like, Excel sheet.
Oh yeah. Well, they just did another one that was just that. Like, they just recently released one with Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx coming back, like, called Back in Action. Horrible movie. It's bad. Don't watch it. It's terrible. But I guarantee people are watching the shit out of it because it's got Cameron Diaz and
my brother-in-law told me to watch it. He didn't say it was like I don't think he just said it was funny, but he also likes to laugh at a lot of stuff. But
it has moments. Don't get me wrong. Like, there was some moments. Like, there's one character in it that made Casey and I both were chuckling, but only at this character. And the rest of it, you're just like, whatever. What a waste of huge, because there's some big talent in there. Like, I was like, Jesus.
But that's what happened these days. That's what gets people to watch things now, because we can't, the cinema as we know, like these original screenplays and all these things, like, is that what gets people to the streaming or to the movie theater? Not really anymore. It's what stars in this movie do I like them enough? Do I respect them enough to watch this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you that just literally happened to me. I didn't even see the whole preview. It was like a 20-second snippet of Bill Skarsgård in this car that was like attacking him or something. I don't know if you guys have seen the preview for this. I don't even know what it's called because I didn't even see the whole thing. But I like him a lot he's one of my favorite actors. And I was like, I might need to watch this movie. It's a weird, he's in like what looked like a Range Rover that is like he's being harassed locked.
It's called Locked.
And I like him, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
I know he's a good actor. I know this movie might be weird, but he's amazing, and I know he probably acted his butt off for this. And I only care about it because he's in it.
Yeah. That's fair.
And I feel like that's more of what Hollywood is these days. Like, I got to get the star to validate the plot.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, I'd never even heard of that one before.
Watch the preview for it because I'm going to have to watch the whole thing. It's terrifying for the part I did see. Like, I've been locked in a car before. There was one time my dad, we're going to the beach. He went into the grocery store. And with me and my little brother was really like, it was hot. Like he was supposed to come up pretty quick for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't as long as I ever thought it was, but it was starting really, really hot. And I tried to open the door, and I think it was a Toyota Sequoia that we still have. Like the alarm went off because like it thought it was set to lock. So you tried to do that, and the alarm went off. And I remember like I was panicking. Like it was hot. It was getting hotter.
Yeah.
I was really starting to worry. I don't remember how old I was, like 10 or 11. But I mean, if I was in it for a long period of time, like, yeah, I mean, people have. I'm sure I wasn't close to dying, but I started to like actually panic. Like I was worried, like this is not good. I need my dad to come back like now.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And that's what that movie is. I don't know, we're going off on a whole tangent now, but yeah. Put in a good actor. That's what Netflix and all these streaming services do now. Like that's half the battle.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyways, so circling back now, we've talked about the movies. I think it's pretty clear to our listening audience when we give the rating for each of these movies. It shouldn't come as a shocker. I guess I'll go first.
Yeah, well, let's tell Alec because he's never done it before.
Yeah.
So we
rate together. Do we rate both?
We rate both. Our typical 0 through 5 scale. You rate both, and then who won? Which one won?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for me, honestly, Quiet Place is a 5. Like this movie, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time talking about it again, but like it's a complete movie to me, from the emotional investment to the just unique event that I felt like I was a part of. The character progression, even watching this movie again, it's never going to be the same as the first time, but there's still enough there that is intriguing to me that you pick up on and be like, man, what would that be like? Like, it's very easy for me to insert myself right into any members of the family, especially now that I'm a dad. Like, oh my gosh, dude, like, whew, it just like amped it up in another stratosphere. Everything about it, I just feel like is done really well, and it never. Yeah, there's points in this movie that aren't fast. You guys know that. Listen to me. I want things to continue to progress at a decent pace. Everything about this movie feels intentional, feels right, and feels exactly what it needs to be. And the ending of this movie just, oh man, like if you don't have, like if it doesn't make you feel something, you don't have a heart. Like that amount of sacrifice and what that means for the family, like tugs at your heartstrings. And I think it just takes you on an emotional journey, and it's a unique movie. The opposite of that, Bird Box, like I've kind of said before, I just feel like it's a movie that we've seen various versions of this. It has kind of a unique play, but it came after A Quiet Place that to me did it way bigger and way better, and just felt like kind of like the little stepbrother. So I'm going to give it a 2 compared to the 5, and absolutely, I mean, by my ratings, absolutely A Quiet Place did it better.
All right, Alec.
All right, I'm going to be a 5 for Quiet Place as well. The only kind of knock that I have against it is that it's set up perfectly to be a standalone film. And then they went and now they've got a sequel and a Quiet Place Day One, and it looks like they're turning it into a whole universe thing. And so if that was going to happen, it's almost like go back in time, keep John Krasinski's character around for a little bit so you can build upon that rather than, because like Matt's was saying, you know, it's gut wrenching at the end because you know it's coming. You're like, dude, are you kidding me? And it's a nice way to put a nice little bow on top. And then because of the success, you know, you have now this sequel, they're doing all these spin-offs, and John Krasinski is still involved in it, but not having him on screen except for the occasional flashback sequence really just kind of, you know, it sucks. Bird Box, on the other hand, gets a 0.5 because the name of the movie is Bird Box, but nowhere does it say anything about why birds are special and why they can sense whatever entity, demon, thingamajig is going on. And that is, in my opinion, the laziest that anybody can be. Is we're going to call it Bird Box. Why? Well, because birds can sense this. Why? And not explain that. And you can easily do it, right? You have this guy who kind of explains what they're dealing with. You know, he's a little psychotic, but you just don't want a little snippet about birds. That's all you got to do. There's a little explanation about why birds can sense this.
It's the metaphor.
What metaphor?
The symbolism of the bird box is a literal box that contains birds which serve as a warning system for the characters. The birds can sense the presence of the unseen entity, and their agitation alerts the characters to danger.
Yeah. So why? What makes birds special? Like, does it work with a cat? Can I stick a cat in a box? Do all birds apply? Can I stick an ostrich in a box? Like, there's no reasoning for it to be called Bird Box, or no reason for the birds to have that. And they just kind of gloss over it when you could turn it into a really cool plot point.
Okay.
And that's just the epitome of laziness.
Alex stated his case, and I feel like I need to knock my score down to like
Bird Box wins. No,
I need to knock my score down to like a 1.5 or a 1 now. I feel convinced.
That's funny.
Yeah. 0.5 Quiet Place. Easy win.
Yeah.
Right, bring us home.
I'm also giving Quiet Place a 5. I agree and disagree with Alec in that, I mean, we did a Quiet Place too, and I'm pretty sure I scored it really high too. I really like A Quiet Place too. Yep. I hated Day One.
I've never seen Day One. I just didn't feel like it was worth seeing.
It's not, and it because it kind of does what Bird Box does. Like, it takes something that worked, right, or a concept that worked, but then it dilutes it, and it becomes about the two leads versus the two leads in the first one and the leads in the first one. Like, it didn't matter who was playing it because the story was so damn good. Now, the acting was great, which you needed, and that helped pull it along. But like, the story was just so damn good. And the Day One, it just didn't have the same feel because you're not immersed in that silence and awkwardness. Like, you're learning why they had to do that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so a 5 for Quiet Place. I think it's a masterclass in so many different ways of movie making, like doing something different, utilizing the lack of sound and really leaning into something that most people would be terrified to do. And that is very little, if any, dialogue. I mean, the only real dialogue you get is the kid and John Krasinski at the waterfall. Like, that's it. Like, outside of that, it's all sign language, which is cool, but it was brave. It was nobody done anything like that before, at least that I know of. So, and then just the acting was amazing. The story, the character development, to me, it's why it's a 5. It's a damn near perfect movie. Bird Box, I'm going to give it a 1. I want to like it because there are moments that make me uncomfortable, but it's mostly specifically when Greg comes in, right? But that's because and I think what I was thinking of when Alec was talking about Greg and like the whole situation there of how they had to force this, how do we make them come out of the house so we can further the plot and move the story along? It's one of those things where the stark contrast between these two movies is very prevalent there as well. Like, Quiet Place moves naturally through its story and progression. Bird Box had to be forced into it. And the only reason it works is the shock value. And that's the difference. Is A Quiet Place never goes for shock value. You're just shocked because it toys with you. Bird Box, you have shock value throughout a couple places, like stupid Machine Gun Kelly and his girl, where they're just like, I'm just going to leave. But fucking why? Like, that's stupid. So it comes back to like all of these poor choices were forced to make you uncomfortable or make you feel a certain way that A Quiet Place just naturally did. So based on its writing and its story. So there's the difference for me. 5 and a 1. I was hoping to never watch Bird Box again, but in this comparative nature, it was worth watching because you just see how good A Quiet Place really is when you compare it to what it was. Its direct competition in the same year. It was just didn't. Poor Bird Box just didn't stand a chance. So Quiet Place wins it for me. So I think pretty even across the board on this one. I'm excited for some of the ones later because I think we'll have some difficulty agreeing. But on this one, I think it was easy. It's a good way to start. So there it is. We're back. I love doing the arbitration series. So if I had a gavel, I'd start smacking. There it is. A Quiet Place.
Verdict spoken.
More to come. We got 3 more of these fun.
Definitive. There isn't a split decision here. It was
no
obvious.
This one was easy peasy. All right. Well, Alec, tell everybody where they can find us.
Happy to. So thank you for tuning into week 1 of our month of arbitration series, right? That's the name of it.
Yeah. Arbitration month.
Twinsies, something or another. Thank you, Rich and CB, for choosing movies for this topic. And did they select this topic, or is this one with that?
No, this one we picked because Mattson's been jonesing for it, and we thought it was a good idea. So, but they picked the pairings.
Got it. So thank you, Matson, I guess, for getting this in there because this was cool to do. First one.
I know my people.
Okay, I'm never gonna say anything nice about you ever again. That was cool. Check us out on YouTube, guys, or on Patreon to get involved with the content. We're gonna be doing quite a bit more of the topics coming out. A lot of voting is going to be happening pretty soon. So join us at What's Our Verdict Reviews to get involved in that process. While you're there, check out JJ's like 350 something videos extra on there on that Patreon. Behind the scenes content, extra episodes, anything you guys would ever want related to What's Our Verdict. Check us out there. With that, I'll kick it back to our Titan of Terror, the Colossus of Clout, JJ.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we've got an active vote on there. So if you want to jump in and get to voting for the next little while, you can vote for March's movies. Yeah, which that's going to be a fun topic too. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks, Alec.
Shout out to JJ for a sweet graphic.
That's right. In fact, since we're done with it, let's watch it one more time because it was fun to make.
Damn. Nice.
Yeah, I guess now I'm going to have to figure out a way to make one where it's like the winner pops up. I don't know what I'm going to do there.
Not a bad idea. I probably can help with that too.
Yeah. But yeah, there it is. This has been fun. Looking forward to the next 3 episodes where we do more of this arbitration stuff. And with that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. Catch you on the next one.
Boy. Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagical.
Whoa!